Malala Yousafzai, a young girl from Pakistan, became the face of conflict revolving around the Taliban's refusal to let women have an education. In this matter, events would prove there would be no compromise. Malala Yousafzai was born into a lower-class family in a region called Swat Valley in Pakistan in 1997. As a girl, she was heavily influenced by her father, who ran a school where they lived, becoming very eager to learn from a young age and determined to do whatever she set her mind to. Due to this, when she was a girl, he always said, "Malala will be free as a bird." From 2007 to 2009, the Taliban, an Islamic militant group operating in Pakistan and Afghanistan, began to take over the Swat Valley where Malala lived. The Taliban terrorized people living in Swat Valley, burning and demolishing schools all around the region. By just the end of 2008, the Taliban destroyed 150 schools which had permitted girls' education as a key point in their terror campaign. In December of 2008, Fazlullah, the leader of the Pakistani Taliban, announced a ban on all girls going to school. The ban kept about 80,000 girls out of school, including Malala. There was a national outcry. By January 31st, Fazlullah announced that he would relax his ban and would allow girls to go to school until 5th grade. In February of 2009, fighting continued until the Pakistani government proposed a peace deal which would give the Taliban jurisdiction to enforce Islamic law, also known as Sharia law. This compromise between the Taliban and Pakistani government meant to bring peace, which really just made the conflict over girls' education even worse. Malala's public opposition to the Taliban started back in 2008 when she gave a speech on Pakistani TV entitled, "How Dare the Taliban Take Away My Basic Right to Education?" Then, early in 2009, once the Taliban was legally in charge of Swat, Malala began to write an online diary under the pseudonym Gul Makai for BBC. In her online diary, Malala wrote about her everyday life now that the Taliban was in control, and how it affected both her and her classmates, and how she still wanted to go to school despite the ban. Malala was just 11 years old when she wrote her first BBC entry, which was simply entitled, "I Am Afraid," and in which she says, "I was afraid to go to school because the Taliban had issued an edict banning all girls from attending schools. Only 11 students attended the class out of 27. Over the next few months, Malala continued to write anonymously, and her diary entries were often featured in Pakistani media. As her audience grew, people at BBC, along with her father, became more worried about her safety. Her father once tried to convince her to move to a boarding school outside of Swat to be safe from any possible Taliban attacks, but she refused. "I don't know why, but hearing I was being targeted did not worry me. It seemed to me that everybody knows they will die one day." By May 2009, Malala stopped writing her diary entries, as Pakistan's military operation against the Taliban had cleared out most militants and had regained control of Swat. Even though peace had finally reached Swat and girls could go to school again, Malala's fight did not end there. She was still vocal and passionate about girls' right to education and was featured in a documentary by the New York Times. Malala's true identity was revealed in December of 2009. Over the next few years, Malala continued to speak out for girls' education. In 2011, at only age 13, she was nominated for the International Children's Peace Prize as well as won Pakistan's Youth Peace Prize. Given her continued criticism of the Taliban and girls' education rights, in 2012 the Taliban voted to kill her. October 9, 2012 started out as a normal day for Malala. She got onto her bus after a day of exams and was only about 100 yards from the school gates when her bus was flagged down by 2 men. When on the bus, one of the men asked, "Who is Malala?" Everyone looked at Malala, some thinking it could be a journalist looking for her, but those thoughts were proven wrong when the gunman fired his gun. Malala and 2 other girls on the bus were wounded and they were rushed to a hospital in Swat. News of the event quickly spread, and once Malala's father heard that one of his buses had been attacked, he immediately suspected that it was Malala who had been targeted. When the gunman shot Malala, the bullet went through her head and traveled through her neck and then stopped in her shoulder. When doctors from England came to evaluate the situation, they were worried about Malala's recovery due to the poor conditions of the hospital. Malala was flown to Queen Elizabeth Medical Center in Birmingham. There, she was treated and had further surgery. She was eventually discharged on February 9, 2013, and stayed in the UK to continue her recovery. The Taliban had planned this attack to silence Malala's campaign, but how the world reacted is not what they had in mind. Pakistani politicians condemned the attack, and many civilians flooded the streets, holding up signs in support of Malala. People from all around the world took to social media outlets such as Twitter and Facebook to voice their support of Malala and to denounce the Taliban. Celebrities such as Selena Gomez and organizations like UNICEF tweeted in support of her after the attack. By doing this, even when Malala was in the hospital and unable to speak, her voice was heard through millions of others who were protesting the Taliban's actions and girls not being able to go to school. After the attack, UN Special Education Envoy Gordon Brown decided to help support Malala and created the I Am Malala petition, which aimed to ensure every child would be in school. This petition earned 1 million signatures from around the world, as well as 1 million more from Pakistan itself. After Brown presented this to the Pakistan government, they actually took action and ratified Pakistan's first right to education bill. On her 16th birthday, July 12, 2013, Malala made her first public speech since the shooting at the UN Youth Takeover, speaking to young education activists like herself. Her message in the speech was simple yet powerful. One child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. Malala continued to speak out and do interviews after the shooting. She also published her book entitled I Am Malala, the Girl Who Stood Up for Education and Was Shot by the Taliban in September of 2013. On the eve of the first anniversary of the shooting, the Taliban issued a fresh threat saying, anyone who campaigns against our religion and criticizes Islam like she is doing with her secular ideology is our enemy, and so we will target her again and again. Nevertheless, the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Kailash Satyarthi and Malala Yousafzai for their struggle against oppression of children and for the right for all children to go to school.
This award is not just for me. It is for those forgotten children who want education. It is for those frightened children who want peace.
Today, Malala continues to stand up for children in need of education and speak out against violence. Violence prevents many children and girls from going to school. According to a UNESCO estimate, 130 million girls are out of school around the globe, and those living in areas of violence are 90% more likely to be out of secondary school than those in an area of peace. Another issue she has to face is gender inequality, since many countries and religions think they should not waste education on girls. In places with few restrictions on child labor, many families take their children out of school to work since they need the money. In fact, it is estimated that 150 million children worldwide are engaged in child labor, and less than 15% of those go to school. These are just a few of countless other issues that make it harder for Malala to get education to many places in need. However, Malala has faced many hardships in her own life and has prevailed. Starting out as an 11-year-old kid who just wanted to go to school in a time of war, she had to face the dangers and consequences of conflict between the Taliban and Pakistan government. Very little in a way of compromise was offered to her. She has faced threats and was shot by the Taliban, yet only used her words to combat them. Today, she has devoted her life to providing free education to everyone through her charity, knowing how it feels to be denied an education. In a world full of war, poverty, and gender inequality, Malala still works every day to find a solution for this issue and will go down in history for her activism and for giving a voice to millions of girls.